All right, we are live. I think. Can you hear me, Kyle?
I can. Hey, buddy.
All right, awesome. All right, so we wanted to give everybody a real-time update as to what's going on in the local real estate market, as well as nationally within the real estate market and with lending guidelines. So we've seen tightening of a lot of things. So we wanted to keep you guys apprised of what that looks like for financing side, what options are still there, what options have gone away. Hello, Tanya. I don't know who this is. Pleasure to meet you. And also just really keep you posted as to what's available. So with that, love to dive into this, Kyle, as to talk to us a little bit about what's going on with refinances right now and what loan products are really getting impacted by COVID-19 and the restrictions taking place.
Yeah, so fortunately for anyone who has a profile for a mortgage that's in the strike zone, it's never been better. I mean, rates are as low as they have not been since back in 2014. We are doing a lot of saving money for people who are refinancing to conventional Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac home loan. There is great rates available for VA and FHA home loans. And so when it makes sense, you know, you have to sort of have your numbers analyzed and make sure that the cost benefit is there. You know, if you have a $150,000 loan and you're dropping your rate, you know, 0.25%, that's, you know, saving you less than $500 a year. So I don't know that it makes sense to go through it. But for a lot of people, especially with large, you know, as your loan balances get a little bit larger, if you can drop 0.5% or 1% in rate, pretty cool time to take advantage and either lower your payment or keep making the same payment you were making and shorten your term by quite a bit. A lot of people moving to 20 year, 15 years. Anything outside of the strike zone, the jumbo market is pretty tenuous right now. A lot of lenders have exited completely. There's not a lot of liquidity in the secondary markets for jumbo loans, and so they are still available. It's just become tougher to find, tougher to place. They haven't experienced the same type of dramatic rate drop that conforming loans have had. So just a time to talk to a professional and kind of get your options evaluated and see whether or not you can save some money through a refinance.
Yeah, and Kyle, to those of us listening that aren't familiar with specifically what the jumbo loan limits are locally here in Pierce County, what does that look like currently? When you
there's a couple of them. The main tier where things are happening the best is below 510,000. It's 510, 400, and Congress has expanded for the last couple of years up to a expanded tier of 744,000 and change in our 741, 744. Don't quote me. I always have to look it up. But the high balance conforming range, so you can still find great loans in that range. Anything in Pierce, King, and Snohomish counties, that's where it sits. For Thurston and Kitsap and all the rest of the counties in Washington, you're kind of stuck at that 510 level. So anything above 510 is jumbo.
Okay, cool. And I know we've talked about land loans. Those have changed a lot too. Land loans basically have gone away unless you're bundling with construction, from my understanding. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, there's a couple providers. I mean, land loans and construction financing has always been done best by credit unions or local state banks with portfolios. You can still find it out there. If anyone has questions on their certain profile, reach out to me because I can find where those are being done. If you can't pay cash for land or find a creative way to put yourself in position to pay cash with a home equity line of credit or drawing off of other funds or pulling cash out of a different property, or negotiating an owner contract is a popular way that people do it. Actually getting financing for the land loans, it always has been a little trickier than a single family home or a condo or a townhome, but now more than ever, I'd say it's tougher to find. There are banks out there doing them, and we refer those out. Any bank that has a stable portfolio of loans to lend that money at. Usually a smaller kind of regional bank is going to be the best fit.
Okay, cool. I want to give everybody a quick update as to what's going on the real estate side too, and then bounce back on the financing side. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. All right, can you see?
Supply and demand street, I saw that.
Okay, perfect. So really, I mean, it really does boil down to supply and demand. If we boil it down to the most simplistic aspects of any market. And right now, just to give you some context to this, if we see, less than 6 months worth of inventory on the market or houses for sale, then that represents a seller's market, and we see values are on the rise because there's more buyers than there are sellers. If we see 6 to 7 months worth of inventory, then it's just kind of a neutral market, goes along with inflation. And then if there's 7 months or more worth of inventory, that's where we really see it as being a buyer's market. And we see home values dropping as a result because there's more buyers there's more sellers than there are buyers. If we just kind of take a macro approach as to what's going on with this right now, we can see in Washington, we've got a really, really strong buyer traffic along with really the rest of the nation. And then when we look at how many sellers are out there, it's really weak pretty much for the majority of the nation, definitely in Washington. So that makes it very much so a very strong seller's market. So it's a good time to be selling as a result of that. Looking year over year in Washington, we've seen about a 12%, well, we have seen a 12% increase in values. Locally, here in Pierce County, it's been about the same there. So if we look back, we actually reached an all-time high here at the end of March in Pierce County. Our median sale price is at $410,000 for a home in Pierce County. It blows my mind how much home prices have increased. So values are up 12.3% year to date. And the percent of list price received on average is almost 102% of the asking price. So we're seeing on average homes are selling for 2% over what they're asking. So what that means, if you're a buyer out there, one of the many buyers trying to purchase some of the few homes, it's highly likely that you need to be prepared to come in with a competitive offer that will likely be over asking price, assuming that property is priced appropriately to begin with. We're also seeing a huge differential in what sellers are asking originally. Like this is in regards to the homes that are actually selling at 101.9%. There's a whole nother market of homes that are just sitting on the market that aren't selling, and they're drastically overpriced because people just get greedy. So that's a whole nother conversation though. So boiling it down to what we were talking about earlier though, with 6 months or less as a buyer's or a seller's market, right now we have 0.9 months worth of inventory in all of Pierce County. So that's insane, less than 1 month. And what that means is if no more homes were to come on the market, Kyle, from here on out, it would take less than a month for all of the homes in Pierce County to be completely sold out based on the current trend of how quickly the homes are selling.
Anecdotally, it seems like, we have seen every listing that's priced well in that range, like go with multiple offers still. I mean, if there is an impact that really hits this real estate market from all of the job loss and sort of the economic decline, it's not showing up here yet just because our fundamentals of supply and demand seem so skewed towards sellers,
Totally. Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to share, who was it? Stephanie had mentioned last time, she was curious kind of with how we've shifted to be virtual. Governor Inslee made us non-essential originally, us meaning real estate professionals, real estate agents. And then a couple weeks into it, changed realtors to being essential. So, but there's a lot of health and guidelines around that. So what that means is a real estate agent can now show properties again as of a couple weeks ago. We can meet with sellers. Ideally, we're meeting with our clients, our buyers and sellers virtually like this, over a Zoom meeting. When it's absolutely necessary, we're meeting in person, wearing gloves and a face mask to keep everybody as healthy as possible. And there's some restrictions. So it looks a little different nowadays when we're showing homes. When we are showing homes, one agent is allowed in the home at any given time, and an agent has to be in the home. The seller has to leave the house, and then only one buyer can be in the home at any given time with that agent. So if it's a husband and wife, for example, we've been having one party stay in the car while they walk through with us as the agent through the house. And typically we're doing a FaceTime with the spouse so they can virtually be in the house with us. And then the husband and wife trade and come and walk through the house. So it's been a little interesting to see how we work around this, and yet we are. And I'm going to share with you some of like real time what we're seeing in regards to the demand and sales we've been seeing through this, like how much of an impact has COVID had on our ability to actually get homes sold locally in just a second. But let me share with you kind of what Stephanie was inquiring about before. So some of the time, this is an example of just what we've been doing virtually to set up homes. So in some instances, we've been having sellers actually, when we weren't even allowed to go meet with the seller, when we were still non-essential, we'd have the seller take the photo on their iPhone, send it to us, and then we just do edits to it. And so exact same photo, you can see, add the blue sky, make things a little look more green, and it can really just make it pop. I'll give you some other examples of this. So same thing, exact same photo here. We just photoshopped it. So you can see here, we're able to do things like add the fire, add lighting in the house, the nice sunset in here, really makes it pop, and helps us to really make the home showcase well online. So we can make the grass greener. There's a number of different things, Photoshop things out. But virtual decluttering, this has been a big one, especially we've got so many families that are stuck at home right now, right? And just like trying to just keep life going, let alone their house clean with everybody being home right now. So we're able to do this virtually too, which has been helpful. So this is an example of a kitchen, the actual photo. And then this is actual after we Photoshop it and virtually declutter it. And so it's pretty cool that we're able to make it showcase well online, even though it may be fully lived in at the moment. Again, this photo up here is staged, and then down here we virtually declutter it. See it again here. This condo unit here had furniture in it. We were able to totally remove the furniture from it. So then virtual staging is something we're able to do too. So this is going to blow your mind, Kyle, in regards to what we can do. So this is an example of a house, the way the photo was actually taken. All of this staging isn't actually in the house. It's just been virtually added through Photoshop. So we can really set these places up to shine well. So adding the photos, the couches, the artwork on the wall, the lamps, you name it. Same thing, all that bedroom furniture, we can add that. So we've got a lot of options to still make homes pop and look good online, even when they are being fully lived in during a quarantine time. We also are doing a 360 virtual tour. So I'll give you a quick example of this. Let's see if I can pull this up for you. Can you see the YouTube here?
Yep.
Okay. So this is pretty slick. So you can see here how we can just go through and the buyer can view the properties essentially like they're there, pulling it. If they want to look up at the sky, they can do that. If they want to look down, and we can walk them through the entire property here. So it really, with them being able to stay home, stay safe, they can still actually get inside these houses virtually and walk through and get an idea of what they're all about.
I've seen that house.
Yeah, you know this one, right? The Hauer residence.
Did you virtually declutter that too?
No, we did not. You can see the gun or the ammo on the top of our fridge there. You might be able to see a little too much through this. So it really gives you like a full on idea of what's there. So you can, look up, look all around. So that's just a general idea of what's available to equip people to still be able to be, getting a very real glimpse of what a property is all about without it just being like everything photoshopped. And it's not for every property, and for the certain buyers, it's helpful to help them move forward. I think that's yeah. So let me show you this. This is really interesting in regards to just general what we're seeing in trends. This is for Pierce County specifically. So we're seeing new listings. This is going back to 2017. It's just like totally dropping off. We've seen a little bit of an uptick as of March. I'm going to show you, this is as current of data that the MLS provides, but I've actually been tracking it every freaking day because I want to make sure we have very real-time info. So in my geeky Excel sheet deal, this is a breakdown of what is actually taking place up to today. This blue line represents the new listings in Pierce County. If we go all the way back to early March, right when COVID was really having an impact here. Can you see the screen all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see the number of new listings in blue. They're staying really low. Number of new pending sales is in red. We've been consistently seeing, and over this last weekend, I'd say we saw the biggest gap out of this whole month or so. We're seeing typically about double the number of new pendings taking place each day compared to new listings. So, if 30 new listings come on the market, typically we're seeing 60 deals went pending that same day. So we're definitely seeing a lot of buyer activity. I'd say probably the market's biggest challenge right now is just not having enough homes to sell in the first place. So that's been really interesting to see that.
How do you get so many more pendings than active listings? Is that because there's off-market deals, or is that because things are pending and come back off and then go live again? Like, almost seems like it'd be a one-to-one, but.
Right, and it's been blowing our mind. That's what we've been saying. When is this going to stop? We're going to run out of inventory, and we have been seeing our inventory is getting less and less and less.
Okay.
So that's really what the issue is. We are at like an all-time low in our inventory because of that. We are seeing some sale fails, but not many. So I've been tracking that as well. There's only a handful of sale fails that I'm seeing come across each day throughout the entire multiple within the general Pierce County area. So it is very much so like a stronger seller's market than I've ever seen before. And the buyers that are out right now are very serious. We're not just seeing like looky-loo buyers out there. As you can see, buyers are making buying decisions and locking down properties throughout this. So the other thing is look at sale price. So this is showing the listings. This is sale prices. This is specifically Pierce County over the last 12 months. We're just seeing them continue to go up. So we're at an all-time high for appreciation. Even amongst COVID, we're seeing, because bringing it back again to supply and demand, right? So that's a big thing. Like, what we don't know is how big of an impact is all this unemployment, these astronomical unemployment rates, going to have on this. I'm not going to pretend like I know what the future has in store for us with all of this. What I do know, just based on the facts that we have right now, is supply and demand is definitely, we've got a very strong real estate market. The biggest thing holding us back isn't actually lack of employment, it's lack of homes on the market at this point.
Can you back that beyond 3 years, Jen? Can you go like, no?
Yeah.
Let
me see, 5 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. We can go as far back as over the last 10 years.
Yeah, so there's the dip. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we bottomed out in the summer of 2012 in Pierce County.
What do you, I mean, naturally, I think a lot of home buyers are wondering when it might drop, or if it will drop, or holding on the sidelines until it drops. What are you telling those folks?
the people that are waiting for the market to drop. I would say, you know, I heard something from Tanner Allison. He's an agent on our team earlier. I think it was last week. And it was the first time I had heard it said this way. And it's so true. Like it's about time in the market, not time on the market. So making sure that we're not trying to time it just perfectly so we're buying right when we need to, but making sure that we're buying now so that we will have enough time in the market to make it. I mean, you've seen this firsthand with, you know, your Rosedale property that you bought it at a peak. I know your very first home, and time has gone on and it's just made sense as you've continued to hold on and you own that property longer and longer. And you're like, oh, okay, now this does make sense. And really, I think that's a big thing. Like how many times have you driven by a property where, you know, maybe your dad or uncle said, oh gosh, I'm sure glad I didn't buy that house 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Never, right?
I bought that for 30 grand. And now it's 1 million.
Totally. So I think that's a big thing of it. We don't know where the market's going to go from here. There's so much uncertainty in the market, more than ever right now. And if we just look at supply and demand as a whole, I would say our market is incredibly strong in this moment. What's going to happen a month or two, I don't know. It's been interesting seeing some projections from people. I'll pull up some, let me see here. Share my screen again. This is from Goldman Sachs, unemployment rate projections. Their projection for 2020 is a 15% unemployment rate, and then leveling down to 6 to 8% next year, and then 5%, and then back down to 4%. So this being a temporary thing. Let's see if I can find some. This is interesting here. So this is looking at the month's inventory of homes for sale. In 2007, you know, at the height of our last bubble, there were 8.2 months worth of inventory nationwide. Today, nationwide, there's 3.1. Locally, here in Pierce County, we have 0.9 months supply.
Yep.
This is really interesting too, just showing how, I mean, you've seen it, and I've been pleased to see it in regards to the mortgage industry. Usually it's this pendulum of like, the mortgage industry is really, you know, conservative or really loose, and they can't quite balance it. And it's been really good to see that since the crisis that we had during the Great Recession, that they've actually kept things solid and not just giving loans to anybody and their mom. So you can see, like, this was when we had the housing bubble and anyone and their mom could get a loan. We're not in that same kind of climate, and we never have been ever since.
Even if their mom was in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell people this anecdotally, just who are getting concerned before all this stuff happened about home appreciation. And, you know, I actually wish I would have had this graph to sort of tell the story, but the pendulum went from, you know, fog a mirror and get multiple home loans to buy at one time with very little down on your 16th investment property while you know, inflate your income, and there's mortgage fraud running rampant. Like, it was unbelievable the amount of credit that was inappropriately extended. And in 2000, you know, 8, 9, 10, that snapped back hard. Overnight, 60% of the home buyers went away because all of the loan programs that were supporting their activity went away. And ever since then, the pendulum swung all the way over to not only do you have to document your income and your assets and your employment and your, you know, have to have reasonable good credit, we're also going to need your 3rd grade report card and a blood sample and, you know, your dog's report card and everything. And it really hasn't changed a whole lot. Like, all of this crazy buyer demand we've been experiencing for the last several years, we're still getting all that stuff. So when a sign goes in the yard and there's multiple families offering to win the offer on the same house, those are all families that are qualified and have been vetted and can, you know, demonstrate their ability to earn income and support the mortgage payment. And so that gives you some comfort in the stability of what this is meant, especially for the Pacific Northwest, where there's just so many human beings that are qualified to buy homes and not very many homes to buy.
Yeah, definitely. Let me show you some. So this is, if we, let's see if I can find the one I'm looking for here. Yeah, as far as affordability, historic norm for affordability for being able to buy a home is 21.2%, meaning the median income compared to the median home value. And we can see right now on a national level, we're in a very affordable time. So even with values having consistently increased as much as they have, so have median incomes. So as a ratio there, that's been promising to see as well. This is interesting, just projections, who knows what will actually happen. Home prices projected to continue to appreciate even amongst this. From the home price expectations survey, the overall was 2.5% this year, about 2% each following year. And this shows from, the projections from each of these different mortgage banker associations, Zelman Associates, Fannie Mae, National Association of Realtors, Freddie Mac. So who knows what will actually be, but it's interesting to see what people are seeing.
And back to that last one, Chad, one of the stories we tell home buyers on why the fundamentals of home buying make sense. I mean, historically, it's just a 3 to 5% appreciation rate over time. Obviously, that wasn't true in 2007, but in overall, long term, you're going to get up an appreciation of 3 to 5%. Real estate is a scarce resource, meaning there's only so much of it, and it's all local. So especially in our area, the Pacific Northwest, we can have some faith in those numbers long term based on how many people want to live here and are moving here. But the really interesting thing is that if you take, let's say a $500,000 home purchase, and let's say that you have accumulated 50 grand, 10% down to be able to invest in that property. If you were to decide not to buy a house, not only do you give up the stability that 30 years of a stable housing payment are going to protect you against inflation, whereas the renter continues to have their housing expense monthly, the biggest expense you have as a family continues to go up, whereas a homeowner gets to enjoy stable 3-decade-long fixed home payment. Your taxes will creep up a little bit, maybe your insurance, but if you're in a fixed rate, that's an incredible amount of insurance to give yourself that your main housing, your main payment in your life isn't going to change. But that 50 grand, let's say that you want to take some opportunities in the stock market right now and buy what many think is kind of a depressed market, and you do really well. Let's say you average 5% on that return. That's $2,500 a year that you will make with that investment, which is great. But if you invest that into a down payment, because it's a levered investment, you're not just getting the return off your 50 grand, you're getting a return off your 500 grand. And so if you can put that money in what might be an equivalent rental payment right now, if you're buying versus renting into a $500,000 house, and that house goes up just by the numbers you're saying, let's call it 3% per year, that's $15,000 a year that you make off of your investment, and the compounding of that with a $50,000 investment making 15 grand, that's 30% per year on your money, let alone the tax advantage, let alone the principal the principal reduction you get over time, and all the other reasons it makes sense to buy a house. So just the fundamentals of real estate, I think the reason I'm saying all this is that even with a measly 3% per year of appreciation, unlike the 10 plus we've experienced, it seems like the last few years, that still makes housing such a great investment.
Yeah. I wish I had a microphone. I would just drop it right now.
Drop it. We're out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, that's what I personally love about real estate, Kyle, is when you have the opportunity, like a stock. If I go and I've got, $10,000, I want to buy a $10,000 stock. How much is that $10,000 stock going to cost me? $10,000, right? And it's like, okay, but I want to buy a $500,000 house. It actually only costs me, the 20% down, or if I'm, owner occupied, doing less down payment than that, that's also an option as well. So I can actually control this $500,000 asset that's going to appreciate, 5% per year of 500,000 for that smaller amount compared to investing it elsewhere, stock market, whatnot. I don't get that leverage aspect, which is definitely like the secret sauce of what makes growing wealth through real estate so amazing, in my opinion.
What are you going through as a landlord right now? And obviously there's some real temporary pain for a lot of people having trouble, with their incomes being, temporarily cut down. A lot of pressure on the rental market and a lot of pressure on landlords. So for people that are thinking about maybe renting out a house that they own, or instead of dealing with the volatility in the stock market, getting into rental properties, what are you sharing about kind of some of the risk factors or components, especially in the Pacific Northwest, of real estate investment, just as a non-owner occupied?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say, now more than ever, nothing has changed in the fact that when you're investing in real estate, it's important to go in equipped with reserves. So you want to plan ahead of time for vacancies. So you shouldn't be buying a rental property if you don't have money already in a reserve account, when the hot water tank goes out, or, needs a new refrigerator, whatever it might be, or you've got 2 months worth of potential vacancies. So those are all things that I think are important. And my recommendation is, if you own rental properties, if you already own rental properties and you're not doing it this way, I would encourage you to have a separate bank account specifically for your rental properties. And any rent that you receive from your tenants, put directly into that bank account, and make your mortgage payments directly from that bank account. Any repairs that you need to make on the house, whether it's the hot water tank or whatever it might be, pay from that bank account. So you're making sure that that's just an asset that's growing on its own. That's not what's feeding you every single day. You're setting that aside to build wealth with. And essentially the money that your tenants pay in rent is what's paying for those repairs and improvements and vacancies from that account over time. And it's amazing how if you just are good about separating the two, we're able to do so much more and have the reserves for moments like this, where things that we don't necessarily plan on come up, but we're not just like, oh no, we were living off of this rental income and thinking that that's what was going to get us by. Does that make sense?
I think that's great, man. I think that in remembering back to 2007, 2008, when just catastrophic collapse of real estate values, and I think it exposed people that got too aggressive and too greedy. And if you were putting down too little on an investment property, and you could get zero down investment property loans, and you were able to buy an investment property that wasn't even cash flowing, you were feeding it $500 a month or $1,000, and when the market turned, that was brutal for anyone who had too much leverage, didn't screen their tenants well. They were in risky mortgage products. They got ARMs, and they got interest only, and they got negative amortizing. And most importantly of all, you said it, they didn't have reserves. And I just remember watching the investment clients and friends I had who made it through that with a little bit of pain, but made it through fine. They were the ones that had committed to having cash, saving cash, and they can weather a 6-month vacancy. They can weather a roof repair. They could get out of a property that wasn't performing well, a really bad tenant that drug on a tough situation for a long time. even a catastrophic drop in property values, because they were in a fixed rate mortgage and they had a lot of cash reserves, they made it through. And I think this will be another good reminder to anyone investing in real estate. You cannot understate the importance of saving cash, having cash on hand. Murphy will inevitably come and knock on your door, and he will want your cash in the form of some sort of repair or a vacancy, or all of a sudden your primary income gets clipped because someone eats a bat. And then you have the cash to make it through. It's not fun, but it's purely a nuisance that you can recover from, rather than getting too aggressive, buying too many rental properties, and not committing to, having, 6 months of reserves for your personal expenses, and then, a good chunk of reserves for every, investment property you have. But I had people with huge real estate portfolios. They didn't foreclose on anything because, their value went down by 40%. It's not fun, but they had their properties rented. They dealt with vacancies. They dealt with repairs. And sure enough, they came out the other side looking amazing,
Yeah. That actually leads into a question that I had for you really well. I want to share this. So can you see this, this graph of all homes in America having at least 50% equity?
Yes.
Okay. So this is really, really promising to see, because this is night and day difference from what we saw back in 2008. Right now, over 50%, so 53.8% of all homes in America have more than 50% equity in them. So that's huge. A lot of people don't realize how much money they're sitting on just in equity in their home, as values have increased so much over the last several years. 37% of homes in America are owned free and clear. That's really exciting to see. And 26.7% of the mortgages have at least 50% equity. So when we look at that, I'm encouraged to see that there's so much wealth that's been generated within real estate as a whole throughout our country. It makes me wonder, though, when we're talking about reserves and whatnot, how are we being impacted right now, Kyle, from anybody that wants to access this just to have a security blanket in place, so that if they want to do a home equity line of credit, just to make sure that they have access to emergency funds in worst case scenario, and they're in a tough spot, not to spend it on a new car or a vacation or anything, but for this reserves type conversation that we're talking about. What does that look like? Where borrowers limited in being able to do this based on the tightening of restrictions right now?
Yeah, so obviously your first priority is to have cash reserves that don't have to be borrowed or don't have to be leveraged. And beyond that, I have a lot of, it's really prudent to have some sort of a tool set up. I really like home equity lines of credit for this option. It's great to have a zero balance home equity line of credit, or a home equity line of credit that you took out more than you needed as a line, but you only borrowed the amount you needed to redo your kitchen or whatever, so that you have the next best source of reserve funds are just a phone call away. Now, these are not a great primary source of reserve funds, because banks can cut them off on you. If a bank gets a margin call, or all of their financial levers are wrong, they can cancel out your home equity line of credit without blinking an eye. But the nice thing about a HELOC is that you don't have to pay interest on it. It just sits there, small annual fee usually. Not a bad alternative, kind of backup plan to your primary cash reserves, just in the event that you have a tough stretch or a surprise repair. We always say, like, when you need the money the most, it's the hardest to get, when you're in between jobs, or when you decide to start a business, or when you have something weird ding your credit that, you need to dispute. It's hardest to get a loan. So why not have a home equity line of credit? Lenders are still going up to 90%, some to even 95%, which is crazy. But that doesn't mean you have to borrow that much, and you have to really be careful with home equity lines of credit, because it becomes almost too easy to, spend it. So with equity, you can either consume it or you can conserve it. And so consumption would be, using it for a home repair, home renovation, using it for to pay off other debt, which isn't, sometimes that does make sense rather than leverage something or finance it, in an unsecured manner. But it's not the same as conserving your equity. Over time, you'd like your mortgage to go that way down and not that way. And you see some people get into some problems. We're Americans. We sometimes like to buy now, pay later. And an equity line of credit is an easy way to do that. So just my caution to folks is that when you're using home equity, make sure you're conserving it. You're doing something to either invest in a house that you're going to sell, or you're paying off higher interest rate debt, not to run it back up again. You're using your home equity to move forward financially and not just to have more spending money. But yeah, that home equity line of credit option is nice just because it's sort of an extra backstop in the event that you want to tap it for a little bit extra cash reserves in between jobs, or in between a vacancy, or a repair on a rental, or an opportunity. You see a great opportunity come up to snag a property or whatever, you can hop right on it with those funds you've set up. Maybe the stock market's doing really well, so you don't want to liquidate accounts like that, or if you have a tax obligation, if you were to liquidate long-term capital gains or whatever. So anyway, HELOC is a good secondary option to cash reserves.
Did I hear you correctly that 90 to 95% loan to value is what they're?
Yeah, most of them will go to 80, 85. There's a few that will go to 90. There's one that I know of that is going to 95 still.
Wow.
So back, and just for everyone to have context, back in 2006, 7, 8, actually, I think the party was over in 2008. Half of 2007 and before, you could go to 125, and they would lend you money on 125% of your house's value. And it did not work out very well for anyone. So.
All right. Well, good. What were some of my other questions? Can you give us an update on what options exist on the zero down options for buyers? So I know, VA obviously is still doing zero down as always. How does that look with like USDA? Has that changed at all? Have they tightened that up, and are they now requiring down payments, or those?
Nope. Yeah, you're still able. The government secured loans, on the non-government side, you need a 3% down payment or a 5% down payment, depending on the program and your profile. FHA 3.5%. There is down payment assistance still available. The ICE is creaking a little bit. A lot of lenders are no longer doing the Washington State bond down payment assistance program. There's been some questions from, in the amount of risk that the servicer is putting on the originator to maybe hold the originator responsible if the person loses their job after funding and can't make the payment. So I think some lenders have looked at that risk and decided they're going to exit that market for a while. A lot of my friends at different mortgage companies can't do those state bond programs right now, those zero down programs. We're still doing them, but I'm watching it closely just because you watch everybody exit the pool and you're wondering what's wrong with the pool, right? So I don't want to be the last one in, but that is a program that still exists. The rates are actually really good. Washington State Housing Finance Commission you can Google that, wshfc.org. And then USDA, business as usual. Obviously, you're limited there to a property in a rural area, and you have to go by their map. You also have income limits for a few of these down payment assistance or zero down programs where you can't make too much money, so it's not for everyone. But thankfully, the stuff that's backed by either the USDA, Department of Housing and the United States Department of Agriculture. I always feel like it's like eggs or meat or something. They actually do home loans too. And then also the, VA is going along just fine. And then the Washington State bond for now. Other than that, it really is better if someone can sort of do the work to accumulate 3% or 3.5% down or 5% down. And sometimes even if you are eligible for a zero down program or a down payment assistance program, it might still make sense for you to wait and just kind of hang tight and save some money until you have a little bit more in reserves or until you can put a small down payment down. But fortunately, there's still some good options for zero down.
Awesome. All right, employment verification time frame. I know that's been tightening up a lot too. So that's a big thing with so many layoffs taking place. The lenders are wanting proof that the borrower does in fact still have a job before they fund their loan to purchase a home. So we're seeing it, like 10 days out originally, and now what are you, like to 1 day?
Yeah, I mean, the premise is that, while everyone is in this temporary weird setback that is causing their, hours to decline or complete furlough or even, a permanent layoff or at least, until the foreseeable future. And there's some, government programs that are coming out to sort of help along with this. There's no shift in the lender's responsibility to set up a home buyer for success and make sure that they can meet the obligation without things moving in an unfortunate direction. And so if anything, that is really tightened up. They want to make sure that there's no evidence of hour reductions or income reductions. We're seeing forms now that buyers have to certify, like, I've not been notified about a change in hours. I don't know of an impending layoff. And it's a conversation we're having on every loan, for those people that maybe wonder if they're going to still have their job in another few weeks. But lenders always will call and verify employment before a mortgage loan closes. And like you mentioned, it's now happening like right before closing. Double check, are they still employed? Are they still employed? And, as much as it's to protect the banks, it's also to protect homeowners from getting into a situation that is based off of a certain income level that could change post-closing. And so the industry is not very forgiving on that front in terms of evidence that hours or income might be declining.
Yeah. So if you're buying a home right now, it would probably be a good idea to make sure you've got really good communication going on with your employer if you have an employer, and so that they can be sure that the lender is able to connect with them quickly and figure out the best way for that communication to take place so that verification can happen quickly and doesn't hold things up and prevent your home loan from being able to close and get your house closed.
Yeah, it's interesting on the self-employed front too, because we're having to go in and kind of document that their business is still, going. There's recent activity, so you figure all these people that are business owners that are like on the sidelines right now until these stay-at-homes get lifted. And if those people have zero revenues coming in or they can't demonstrate that their business is in some way active, it's kind of dicey for them too. For many of us, it's, for many folks out there, it's such a temporary, that once they lift this order, you're going to get to go out and, do landscaping again or start framing houses again or whatever it is that you do. So it's just almost silly that you couldn't qualify, based on income you've had for the last 10 years and you're going to have again, you're just stuck at home right now. So there's some creativity in terms of some of the automation in the process where we can, there's a thing called day one certainty, where if we set up the loan the right way, we'll do the, verification up front, and then you're a little bit protected from future checks in the same way. But, in general, we all want the same thing, like put you in a good position and be able to make your payment comfortably and not have to go through the stress and pain of having your home loan arrangement not be an obligation you can meet. So, I think just clear communication with your lender, with your employer, with all the parties involved, and then work communicating really clearly with underwriting so that they get their head around what kind of business you're in. And so for the most part, I think just communicating clearly can alleviate a lot of the stress and, situations.
Yeah. Kyle, something I wanted to bring up is you can see the new listings and new pending that I just shared again, right?
Yep.
So one of the things that I've definitely come to recognize over the last 16 years is that the speed of buyers and the speed of sellers are very different. And I think it's important to recognize that more so now than ever, because a buyer can essentially, get pre-approved within a day. Would you say that's reasonable?
Yep.
They provide you their information, do their online application, and they are ready to actually, get under contract in purchasing a home. So again, that's our red line. This is the number of buyers that got under contract on a home. Whereas the sellers, the number of new listings here, that takes a little more preparation. So you're meeting with the realtor to make sure that have a real good grasp of what the market value is and the trends, so that you're strategically positioning yourself within that. You're getting yourself set up with, you're doing any kind of decluttering or staging, doing the professional photography, doing edits for that, really getting yourself equipped to make that big wow first impression when you hit the market, because we all know you only get one first impression. And so that process takes longer. And right now we're seeing so much buyer activity. And I think there's also a ton of buyers that are not active right now, that are just kind of stepping back on the sidelines and just waiting for this dust to settle before they really take action. And so I believe there's going to be a even heightened buyer activity once this quarantine lifts. And the sellers that have taken action in using this time to prep and get ready and really make sure that their house is ready, whether they go live the day the quarantine lifts or right now, I think are going to see a very big benefit compared to those that just start that selling process after it lifts, because there's going to be this flood of a rush of activity of buyers that have just been sitting at home browsing homes for sale online during quarantine, dreaming about this perfect house that, oh, we'd love that, just can't wait to actually go out there and look at it once we feel comfortable with what's going on. So I think there's a big opportunity within that, if for anybody that's considering selling their house, to start taking those steps now. Even if you're not going on the market now, at least start the preparation, recognizing that you don't move at the speed of a buyer. If you really want to seize the market of the seller's market that we're in right now, it could be a good move for you.
Yeah, you wonder what kind of spring this is creating, like, in terms of kind of pulling back, and then at some point it's going to release and kind of start to look like less unknowns, maybe less volatility in the financial markets. We kind of understand what this, the medical side of this whole thing becomes more clear, and we sort of see the route to recovery in a way that's just been so confusing the last few weeks. And so you wonder if just in places with super low inventory and a lot of people with jobs who can qualify for homes, who can afford those homes, if it's going to be like a bit of a spring in terms of, buyers getting released out on the market who maybe they are laid off right now, maybe they are furloughed. One thing I know about, back to the qualification thing, we're not going to penalize people for having been forced to stay at home. Once you're back at work, even if it's a written date in the future that your company's committing to put you back at work, you can go buy. And so you imagine that there's quite a well of potential home buyers that are, getting ready or going to be able to buy in the next few months. At some point, they got to sit on the sidelines now, but there's going to be an opportunity for someone who's got a great home listed at the right price to really, generate a lot of activity, I would guess, once all these buyers get back out there.
So say that again, Kyle. You said that if a buyer has an employment date that they're scheduled to go back to work, they can buy once that date comes, or they can buy now even before that date.
I don't know that we have gotten any companies to commit to certain dates yet. There have been situations where people have taken elective leave, and maybe they have the seniority to go back to work, more full time, but they've just decided to take a leave. If we can get in writing when they're expected back at work, it's like taking a medical leave, or maternity leave, or taking having a new job offer that you don't start yet. In the old days, you used to have a pay stub that you could show that you're actually employed, and then it loosened up a little bit, and then you could just verify that you'd started at that job. And now for the last couple of years, we've been able to just go off of offer letters. My start date's August 1st. 60 days before that, on June 1st, you're eligible to get a home loan. And so if an employer is willing to put it in writing when you're back at work, and of course you got a little bit of reserve to sort of cover yourself until then, you can get a loan even though you're not physically back at work. I think that it's a problem for some employers because they can't really put that in writing right now. But if for the ones who can, that buyer could potentially, close on something before they're physically back at work.
Okay, cool. All right. Something else I wanted to really dive into. I think it's important. My wife and I had a bit of a meltdown this morning of just what's going on. Like, we're homeschooling, we're trying to figure out this new way of life, and there's a lot of newness to what everybody's dealing with right now. And so how can we equip ourselves as best possible to still move forward in a healthy way, knowing that we don't know what the future holds for sure. And I think it's really relevant. Kyle, you and I have talked about this over the years. The Stockdale paradox. So Stockdale was I believe the sole survivor of the Vietnamese prisoner of war camp, and he was there for a really, really long time. And they did an interview with him in Jim Collins' book Good to Great. He references it. And a coping strategy, what was his coping strategy to make it through that uncertain time that was full of just stress and fear and you name it. And I'm gonna share here from that book. He said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect, I would not trade." When Jim Collins asked who didn't make it out of Vietnam, Stockdale replied, "Oh, that's easy, the optimists. Oh, they were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Easter would go, and then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again, and they died of a broken heart." So Stockdale then added, "This is a very important lesson. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." And I think that is so relevant right now, whether it's in regards to, the real estate market, the mortgage market, homeschooling our kids, the challenges that comes with that, having a loss of job, loss of loved ones through everything that's going on, you name it. There's all sorts of crap taking place all around the world, and I think it's so imperative that we approach this new reality that we're living in as this is going to be this way for a very, very long time, and not convince ourselves in an optimistic way that this will all be done come May 5th or whatever the original date was that Ensley said will be, quarantine will be up. And by doing so, like, if this were to never change, what would we need to have in place today to continue on in this way? And so I just want to, for those of you that haven't already been approaching this in that type of way, and maybe just holding your breath and thinking, I just can't wait for this to be over, and white knuckling this, which I know is so common and very normal to be doing. I just want to really encourage you to approach this in a way of, let's not white knuckle it. Let's change how we approach it and go at it from that kind of paradox of faith and realism at the same time. Faith that we will get through this, and realism that we have no idea how long that's going to be. So let's approach it like, that we're going to continue on this forevermore. So I don't want to say that to be discouraging. I say that because I think it's super, super important that just in our real estate business, for any realtors listening to this too, I think it's imperative that we be shifting to virtual. So I mean, from now on, even after this is done, we're going to be offering not only in-person consultations, but virtual consultations, because I know the world as we know it has changed, and some people are going to prefer doing things virtual after experiencing this new way of being. So I just want to give some suggestions with that to really make sure that we're all thinking through this in a healthy way and working through this in a healthy way. And with that, increase your meds. And when I say that, meds being an acronym, like M for meds is meditation or prayer. Like, make sure that you're giving yourself alone time, quiet time. Maybe you wake up extra early in the morning to get away from the kids and just have some time for yourself to really focus on that. E being for exercise, making sure that you're staying healthy and active. D for diet, make sure that you're eating well and not just eating and drinking water, not just binge drinking to get through this and kind of the holding your breath mentality. And S for sleep, make sure that you're getting enough sleep, but not too much sleep. So increase your meds. Remember that as an acronym as we all work through this to be as effective and come out ahead. And I think we can learn a lot from the Stockdale paradox that he shared with us.
Check this out, Chad. You'll appreciate this. We've gone over this book before, and we've always loved that premise. Confront the facts and don't lose hope. Like, how do you do both? Don't just have hope and don't just look at the dismal facts, but have both. And it's hard. I'm reading this book called The Splendid and the Vile. It's about Winston Churchill during World War II. He's just a super eccentric character that people are trying to get their head around this guy, and they're basically having to deal with the risk that they're going to be invaded by Germany at any point. And France is teetering on the brink of total collapse, as Hitler has already invaded Holland and Poland and Norway and Denmark and Belgium, and France is about to fall. And the British know that if France falls, they're basically at massive risk of having all of the energy of the Nazi army turned towards them. And the US has not entered the war yet, and Churchill knows that will be an absolute key to Britain surviving. But he says in a speech, this is before Vietnam, long before Jim Collins brought this story up. Check this out. I was reading this the other night. The speech, Churchill gives this speech on the radio. The speech set a pattern for Churchill that he would follow throughout the war, offering a sober appraisal of facts, tempered with reason for optimism. Quote, "It would be foolish to disguise the gravity of the hour," he said. "It would still be more foolish to lose heart and courage." I'm like, whoa, this is like before Good to Great. This is like where Stockdale got this idea from. He must have been reading Churchill. So anyway, I thought that was cool.
I love it. Cool. Well, that's all I got. What other things do you think would be important for anybody watching this to be aware of, either mortgage related or otherwise?
Yeah, just the whole forbearance through the CARES Act. Just make sure that you're having really good conversations and clear communication, and write down the names of people you talk to with the servicers, your loan servicers. Hopefully you can call if you're really in need of a forbearance, which of course is not loan forgiveness, but it pushes your balance, your payments down the line. There's already been $450 billion of unpaid principal under this program. Obviously, if it's a question between paying your mortgage and buying food for your family, or keeping the lights on, or having gas in the car, like, do those essentials first. Try to make your payments, because I think that some of the challenges with the forbearance program will become clear too late. And if you must do forbearance, then by all means go for it. Just be careful with what your arrangement is. You don't want to get to the end of 6 months and owe a sum balance of the whole total. You don't want to have your deficit spread out over too short of period. I've seen some that are spread out over 6 months, and so if you have to pay an extra $2,000 a month or $1,000 a month to make up for your 3 months off for making payments, and we're out of work, you don't have a lot of savings, like just make sure that your arrangement with your servicer is a really long-term friendly arrangement, like a permanent loan modification. And that even though they say that it won't affect your credit, there won't be late fees, that's true in terms of not being charged in the way that they report to your credit, but it will still be clear that your loan was modified. And the new mortgage company that you go talk to in a year or 2 or 3 to refinance or buy something else might treat that as a default. So just explore all your options, make sure that it's not just entry level, phone operator person telling you what's going to happen. Get anything in writing before you agree to it, and just make sure you're not going to owe some, large sum deficit or some accelerated payment amount when you're back to work and when the forbearance period is over.
Excellent advice. Thank you. All right. Well, I think we can probably wrap this up then. So thanks for your time and for sharing your expertise and current knowledge with us as this mortgage and real estate landscape is ever changing right now.
I'm just glad that you agreed to end our time here with a song.
Right.
Good stuff, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Bye.